We will be discussing on input service distributor. ISD is only considering tax invoices. A cross charge is something is the head office situated in one state, but the branches are situated in some other state. Now, how will you report it? That is the return. Hello viewers, welcome to our channel, and today we will be discussing on a very important topic which has been made applicable from April 2025. We will be discussing on input service distributor and the concept related to that. Well, as we all know that GST since its inception from 2017 had these provisions for input service distributor and the mechanism for distribution of such input services previously in the GST Act only, but it was not made compulsory. But in the Finance Act 2025, the input service distributor has gained some importance and the provisions has gained some light, and it has been activated from 1st April 2025 with some modifications and amendments that have happened in the Finance Act 2025 with regard to ISD. We will be discussing on such points today, and we'll be giving you a brief idea that who is an ISD and what are the compliances that has increased for dealers and what needs to be checked. So we have distributed this entire video in 4 parts. So we will be discussing on first part, that is registration. Second part is what is the manner of distribution of the input tax. Third part is the compliance, that is the return filing, the due date. And in the fourth point, we'll be discussing on miscellaneous points with regard to ISD where the dealer must be aware of and must be incorporating in its accounting system. So let us start with our first point of discussion, and with regard to what is and who is an ISD and whether there should be a separate registration with regard to such provisions. This we will discuss on a very nutshell basis. First, who is an ISD? Input service distributor. So an input service distributor is a person who has been described in section 2 subsection 61, where who is an ISD? It is an office of a supplier who receives a tax invoice with relation to input services for distinct persons and is liable to distribute such ITC as per the mechanism mentioned in the related rules. Hence, ISD is identified as a separate person where the ISD takes in certain credits on behalf of other distinct persons. Now, it's important to understand who are these distinct persons. Now, the distinct persons are those persons who are liable for separate registration or having a separate business entity, a separate workflow, a separate work of operations. That can be in a different state and that can be within the state also. So we will be discussing on whether this ISD needs to be registered or this ISD, how they are going to be registered. We will be discussing on such aspects. As we discussed that the input service distributor is a separate office. It's an office of the supplier. Now when we are talking of input service distributor, we will be talking of the supplier from the supplier's end. That means who is receiving ITC or receiving tax invoices with relation to supply of goods and services. Now, the question is, ISD comes into the picture for supplies only for input services. So, any supply for inputs or capital goods, that is not considered under ISD, or rather, that is not coming into the picture for ISD. ISD is only considering tax invoices which is with relation to input services. So this is a very critical point, that we have to identify such services, the services which is received by the supplier at its head office. Let's say in our example we are taking the name of a head office, and it is receiving it on behalf of distinct persons who are having separate registrations or having separate business in some other state or in the same state. Let me give you an example. Let's say that a company's head office is situated in West Bengal, that is in Kolkata, and it has got 2 branches, one in Patna and another is in Bhubaneswar. Now, there may be some kind of services which is actually availed by Patna or Bhubaneswar, but due to the centralized processing of bills, centralized payment system, the bill is submitted by the vendor or the person who is giving the services to the head office. Hence, the bill is received in West Bengal, but the services has actually been availed by Patna and Bhubaneswar. Now, the question is, there is a mismatch. What is a mismatch here is that since GST is a destination based tax, that is, GST is calculated or GST is collected by the state where consumption is happening. So, Patna and Bhubaneswar is actually consuming the services. But the states of Bihar or the states of Odisha is not collecting the GST. The GST is transferred to West Bengal. Since the GST is a destination based tax, ISD has been brought into the picture so that each state can take this calculation of their share of GST and can have that in their total collections of GST. So, ISD will come into this picture and will reshuffle such credit from Patna, from Odisha, or rather from West Bengal to Patna and Odisha on such basis which is provided in the rules under the GST law. Now, why has ISD become very important today? ISD has become important today since in the Finance Act 2025, this ISD registration, this workflow for ISD, this distribution of credit has been made mandatory by the government. There was a circular number 199 dated 17th July 2023. In that circular, it was clarified that ISD registration was not compulsory, it was optional, and the credit, the movement of credit, the distribution of credit can be made through cross charge. Now here comes the question that what is a cross charge? We'll be discussing cross charge on a very natural basis in this video. A cross charge is something, let us, for you viewers, we will just make you understand that what is a cross charge. A cross charge is where a particular company which is having two separate business places, one business place or one office is providing service to another office. Let's say the HO is provided some services to the branch. So that is nothing but an internally generated services which is made by the HO or the branch, vice versa. Now, cross charge, under the mechanism of cross charge, there is no definition of cross charge in GST, by the way. This is a term that we will be using in common business parlance, since this is also a one kind of a supply. Now, in this circular 199 dated 17 July 2023, the GSTN has made it clear that you do not have to take ISD registration, but you can distribute your credit with the mechanism of a cross charge, and that was the condition till 31st March 2025. Post March 2025, 1st April, that is from 1st April, if you are falling in the definition of an input service distributor, if you are the supplier and at the head office you are receiving invoices where the services were availed by your branches or offices in other states, then you have to make yourself registered under ISD compulsorily. The GST Council in its flyer also has mentioned this, that GST registration becomes compulsory for ISD. Section 24 clause 8 has mentioned the point of a registration of an ISD. It was previously there in section 24, but now it has been made mandatory and the word is shall get registered. Hence, registration is compulsory for ISD because it can lead to consequences if you are not registered. Now let us come to the second part of ISD in our discussion, that is the manner of distribution, that how will you distribute such credit. That is also given in the Act, and Rule 39 comes into the picture, which gives us the procedure for distribution of credit. In a nutshell, we can say that distribution of credit of ISD to its distinct persons has been made extensively, has been detailed, has been explained in Rule 39. We are not going to in such details. What we can do is that referring to our previous example, where we told that the head office is in West Bengal and there are two branches, one in Patna and another is in Bhubaneswar. Now, say if there is one kind of a service which is availed by Bhubaneswar and the bill is being produced in West Bengal. Now, here comes the question is that the service which has been availed by the Bhubaneswar, the Patna branch has got nothing to do with. Hence, we can say that this service has been exclusively availed by the Bhubaneswar branch. Now the rule says that in such case, West Bengal will exclusively distribute the credit for the bill for the input service to directly to the Bhubaneswar branch and will not distribute anything to the Patna branch. So this is the exclusivity point of Rule 39. Now, barring such exclusive point, there may be some credit which is utilized or availed, or the service has been availed both by Patna and the Bhubaneswar branch. And in such cases, the mechanism that has been mentioned is that on the basis of previous year turnover of such branches, we have to identify a common ratio. After deriving that common ratio, such credit will be distributed among such by the West Bengal head office through ISD mechanism to the respective branches. So this is the methodology that has been mentioned. Now let us go to the third update with IGST, what needs to be done. Now we have understood registration, we have understood the manner of distribution of the credits. Now how will you report it? That is the returns. Here comes a twist. What is that twist? ISD registration is a separate registration than a normal registration. That means if you are having a normal registration in West Bengal, in our example, we're continuing that example, in our West Bengal, we are having a normal registration, we have to get an additional ISD registration, which will then distribute the credit to the branches accordingly. So there will be multiple registration, two registration for a same office. One is the normal registration, where normal GSTR 1, GSTR 3B needs to be filed, and another will be the ISD registration where GSTR 6 needs to be filed. When is the due date for filing of GSTR 6? The due date is 13th of the following month where the services has been availed. So GSTR 1's due date is 11th of the following month, GSTR 6 due date is 13th of the following month. So we are getting a duration of 24 hours only, or 1 day for distribution. It has been clarified by the GSTN that the distribution has to be done in the same month itself. So you cannot say that such services or such inputs have been procured in 1 month and you distribute it in some later on. That point is not there. You have to distribute the ITC in the same month in which the bill is submitted or you are procuring the services. Which registration do you have to inform? You have to inform about the ISD registration. The vendor should know the ISD registration number, because the vendor in its GSTR 1 will be filing the outward supply in his return, giving your ISD registration number, so that such credit is reflected in your GSTR 6A in your ISD registration. So it is very important to give your correct ISD registration number to the vendor for him to file the returns correctly for those invoices where ISD is applicable. Now coming into the last point, and the fourth point is a very vital point. Since it has been made mandatory, there can be penal consequences if you are not registered. Now here important point is that ISD, for distribution of credit of ISD to the branches, having a tax invoice is not sufficient. You need to have a separate ISD invoice in order to distribute your credit to the branches. This is separate from the tax invoice, so your compliance is again increasing here. So if you are having ISD registration, the branches are availing the services, you have to distribute the credit through an ISD invoice which will be filed in GSTR 6, and that copies needs to be serially numbered. Now one thing needs to be noted here is that you cannot distribute excess credit or credit which is more than the credit available to you through your ISD registration. Since it has been given here is that it has got recovery procedures, and any kind of recovery under section 74 or 74A whatsoever can apply to you if there is any excess distribution. And the last point is, so as we have discussed 4 important points for ISD, and it is important for all the business to get their systems updated, to make this new ISD invoice incorporated in your accounting systems, start filing the returns, because at the initial stage there may be some non-compliances, there may be some procedural lapses. Hope this video has given you certain guidelines and certain inputs with regard to ISD. We will be coming up with additional updates on a regular basis. So keep following us and stay tuned with us.